The next question in the mailbag, and we'll take it from N. Lanza. So he wants to know, what stats matter most for each position on the offensive line? And this is a good question because it's essential in every lineup, in every mode, to kind of get your offensive line set how you want it. The Pats, I say, do it better than any others. Because in real life, they actually use so many different combinations, and you can do this in Madden if you know what ratings to look for. What do you think?
Well, let's start with inside out. So if we're going to take a look at the most important ratings for offensive linemen in Madden NFL 16, you can see right here we have two centers. The very first thing I look for, no matter what, for every single offensive lineman is I go directly to strength. And for example, you have David Andrews here in Stork. They're very low in strength, so I immediately think, like, if I face a 3-4 set, I'm going to struggle. I might need to run a fullback scheme because what ends up happening with these strengths ratings when they're low is if you go against a stronger defensive lineman,
especially a D tackle who's going to be lined up there, they're known to be very strong, obviously.
Right. And if you say it's Ndamukong Suh, for example, right, who we'll be playing with later in the game of the week
at quarterback,
but if he has 96 strength, 95 strength, he's going to win that point of attack battle and push your lineman back. It doesn't mean on every single play, but the rating 80 versus the strength rating of the defensive lineman is going to match up. So I always look at strength first. That's my first thing I look at. And if I see a guy with high strength, I immediately say, okay, this guy can suit up and play my team.
Because he can hold the line.
He can hold the line. It doesn't mean he's going to hold it long. Okay, there's other ratings that matter for that, but it does mean that he will potentially have a chance to hold it for not get pushed back, or he'll push forward if he's very strong.
Right.
The next thing I look at, and this is the inside-out approach, I go directly to run block, pass block after that. So it's strength and then run back, pass block.
Pretty important to note, there was a blog on the EA site a year or two ago. We can dig through and try and find the link, but it's more important run block, pass block. There's some footwork stuff. That's more for simulation, for deeper modes like CFM and stuff. For gameplay, I believe you stick to run block and pass block, and that's what matters. Impact block does too. It's tertiary. It's like a third thing we look for, depending on the role. But run block, pass block are the important ones, these two here.
Yeah, so run block, what that is saying is in an instance where there's a blog. If we can find it, we can mention it out to you. Maybe someone in the chat.
I can find it tomorrow.
Maybe Wolfman. Yeah, somebody. We could put it out later. It details out what run block, pass block mean, but I'll paraphrase for you here. So run block, what it actually represents is like how long the offensive lineman is going to hold that block for
against block
shed. So think, okay, now couple this together. Get ready. You have strength, which is push back, or move forward, or neutral. Those are the kind of like the three scenarios, right? Then you have run block, which is going to depend how long you're going to hold that versus block shed in the run. So you say you have a low strength and you have a low run block as an offensive lineman, you're going to get pushed back most likely, and you're going to have a block shed where you're not going to hold that block on running plays. That's a terrible formula.
Bad combo.
But say you have a very strong offensive lineman and his run block is low, you have a chance that you might win that battle up front, but then the block gets beat.
Yes.
Where that can become a benefit to you is that you might not lose yards at the point of attack. You may only get 1 yard, 2 yards. Where the problem is the low strength guys can cause you to lose yards consistently. So that's, to me, strength is the most important. And that same thing goes for pass block with finesse move and power move.
Mm-hmm.
So that's to me is, I think strength is the most important rating I look at. And then I go run block, pass block. The last one here, impact block. What that's for is kicking out blocks. So talk to me a little about guards and
so you got a guard, and say it's 0-1 trap and the guard's going to pull, or it's a toss and they got to get out there. Speed will factor in a little bit, excel a little bit. They got to get out there. But once they meet a defender who's moving towards them, impact block will kind of determine if they're going to kind of get the pancake or how well they're going to block those defenders in space. Two moving players meet, impact block factors in. I'm not sure what it is for defense. Might just be block shed still. But, unless you're putting the guy in that role, not really too concerned about it. Like it for fullbacks. This is really helpful, especially in Ultimate Team. So, like, the tip would be, if the Patriots do it, Stork, since their strength is basically the same, you would start Stork when you want to run the ball, and you'd start Andrews when you want to pass the ball.
Supplement on third down.
Yeah. And so you can kind of follow that formula, and it's a great way to find budget guys, especially early in the season. You go get yourself a big, strong Mackenzie Bernadou run blocker. who can't pass block or a Mike Iapati until a legend comes out that's kind of more balanced across the board. Then you go and get yourself a guy who's a true pass blocker. And you got to remember, interior linemen generally weaker than tackles, generally stronger because they're bigger. So you're not going to find a lot of strong centers. So don't be too concerned about that.
Right. And now this is we went over the first like 4, and really those are the 4 that really mattered the most. But then there's these other stats. What was the word you used?
Tertiary.
Tertiary.
Yeah.
Never heard.
I tried it. I don't know. I said it the other week and nobody called me out.
Here's the thing. The next thing I look at is I look at the combination of speed, agility, and acceleration to kind of get an understanding of how well I might be able to run like a horizontal run game if it comes to like tosses, if it comes to sweeps, power O's, things where you get halfback screens, right? So I see Stork 57 speed, yuck. I see acceleration, okay, but then you see Andrews. We already now know he's better in the run blocking game. Was that right?
So he was the pass blocker.
So he's a pass blocker. So he's going to be good for screens. Acceleration, you might not want, even though Stork, but he's a center, so he's not going to go out into any other than screens. So you get a feel for the player, how good they're going to be on tosses because of their speed, agility, and acceleration. It was like that. What's that guy on the Raiders a couple years ago? Bruce Campbell. He was like 78 speed and like 95 acceleration.
Yeah, Maryland offensive lineman was like a monster. Plus, you could probably put him at tight end if you had to. And that's the other thing you can do with your linemen is throw them at the 6th tight end, bring in 6th offensive lineman spot, put it at tight end, get a whole extra blocker in the run game, especially in play now. It's not as important as much because you can find tight ends that can block, but that's what I find important. And those are the key ratings to look for when you choose an offensive lineman.
And it doesn't really change across the board, really. Like you could say you might value speed, agility, and acceleration a little more for guards because they're the only guys that are pulling. Like you don't typically have a tight end. I don't think there's any play in the game that has a tight end or a tackle pulling.
The Niners have like a couple because they have Joe Staley.
Gotcha.
He's really good, but you'd have to. I don't even think it's a good run because like strong power might have last year, but inside zones.
How about that Saint screen? Remember the Saint screen from iForm a couple years?
You want it to be good, but it's terrible.
Every year.
Saints playbook, bells and whistles.
iForm tight.
Yeah.
Saints halfback's great.